All right, again, today is Tuesday, the 17th of November. We are on Chapter 13 of our textbook. If you remember last time, it's been a while because we had lab ball last week, but when we were going over this project last time, I had some problems with it. All right. Don't need that for now. But we had gotten to a certain point in the chapter, and I got an error message, and it was about 10 minutes before class ended. And rather than fixing the error message, I just said, let's just call it a class. So I went and looked up the error message, and they said this is a very common error message, and you get this because you're referencing a function that you have not created. So just create this function, and it'll fix it, which it didn't do. All right, I did everything. In fact, I copied their stuff, literally from out of Stack Overflow, because I tried it myself 3 times and it didn't work. So I kept looking on Stack Overflow, and a guy came in and he said, hey, people told me that this was, all you had to do was just put in this function with no code in it, and it would fix it. It didn't fix it for me, so let me tell you what I did. The line that they said that was wrong, I just removed the line, and it worked fine. So I did that, and then it worked fine. So I guess live and learn, whatever you want to say. I did want to mention, this is now the only class. If you've turned in homework this week, I haven't really gotten to it. But I am going to need, and if nothing else, I'll only lecture for the first hour on Thursday. And if you're here on Thursday, and ideally you will be, I'm just going to walk up to your desk, and I'm going to have you bring up your assignment, because I cannot read these things. All right? And again, I know that at least with a couple of yours, like for example, not to pick on or glorify anybody, Zane, I could read yours, okay? Scott's was before yours. Scott's not here right now, but Scott was before yours. And I noticed that it asked about that solution file. Remember, I've told you that before. If you save that solution file, by default, if you ever save it, even accidentally, it saves that to a part of your virtual desktop, and it's not where your project is. It buries it about 4 or 5 layers deep in there. And if that happens, I can't see anything. All right? So just so you're aware of that. So what I'll try to do if you're here on Thursday is for those, and it's most of you, you then go, yeah, you haven't graded anything. It's not that I haven't tried. I've tried 3 or 4 times. All right? But if nothing else, I'll just walk around from person to person. You can bring yours up, and I'll grade it that way. I don't like doing that, but it's better than not grading it. And plus, you deserve to know what kind of grade you're going to get on the assignment. All right? A couple of yours I was able to take a look at, so you can take a look. If there's no grade there and you say, well, I've turned it in, that's been the problem. All right? All right. So the one we were working on was this Planet Rocks website. Start up SQL Server 2014 Management Studio. Ideally before the vacation. And again, remember we meet next Monday and Tuesday, and there are no classes Wednesday. Of course, not Thursday, but you're all off on Wednesday. I don't know if you guys have decided yet, or if Kristen's decided, because people have asked about whether or not there'll be a lab assistance here Wednesday, and I don't think that's been determined yet.
It has not yet been determined.
All right. And we've got nothing to go by, because this is the first year since I've been working here, so this is the first year in at least 23 years.
I will say this, if John wants the day off, I can and will be here all day if they have them.
Yeah.
Which is not
well, and that's what I'm saying. In all the time I've been here, we've always had classes Wednesday. In fact, we were encouraged, because a lot of times what you get is people who are traveling for Thanksgiving, so they just take off Wednesday. But we were strongly encouraged a few years ago, no, you lecture, you make it a regular class. You don't just say, you don't make it a bogus class or whatever. Now they've changed that. And I told that to my wife at lunch. I met her for lunch, and she's like, you never have off the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Why is that? And I said, I'm not positive, but to my knowledge, there is actually, believe it or not, because Blackhawk believes in having committees for everything, so there is a scheduling committee. And to my knowledge, that's made up of both administrators and faculty. And I think that one or more of the faculty members suggested, they said, because most of the grade schools are off on that Wednesday. And they said, we're having a big problem with attendance. That's why. It's not that people are even leaving early, but their kids are off. They don't have a sitter, so they're not showing. So I think they're trying that this year to see how it works. But, you know, what you guys were here, we had lab assistants last year, but we had classes on that Wednesday. So they've got nothing to gauge it by. So I don't know who's going to make up their mind, you know, who's going to decide whether or not there will be lab assistants here on Wednesday. I have no idea, but by Tuesday we should know. It'd be nice to let them know by Tuesday. All right.
It'd be nice for us to know too, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd be even nicer if I can guarantee you I won't be here. And I can guarantee you that probably if you went and looked here, I would guess that 99.999% of instructors won't be here. All right.
True, but if I'm here and you're the one student that needs help, I would rather help you than.
Yep.
I think you'd have my undivided.
But again, I think that Kristen
have
is.
some value.
I think Kristen is the one that's going to make the final call on that. So.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'll just keep checking my email.
All right. So last time, this was the point that I got to where it gave me an error message. And you can see I don't have an error message now. All right, and that's because whatever that line was, and I don't remember what it is, and don't worry about that, that's just a pathing issue. All right, but this actually works now. Again, what they had asked you to do in the chapter was where I've got management here, and then I've got the master pages here. I think they wanted this stuff moved under here, all right? Or else the master pages moved up here. I don't remember what it was, but I didn't do it. All right, so this is new. I'm up right to here. And we have not looked at this before with this data source configuration wizard and talking about different data sources. So that's what we're going to look at now. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit. So they said create a new web form called reviews. I did that. Change the title. I did that. Add that link. I did that. So all that stuff, you saw it in there. All right. Again, my path is different than theirs. All right. But it does work. So it says go back to the reviews.aspx page and switch it to design view. All right. Then they'll tell you to drag a drop-down list onto the page. Okay. And then they say enable postback and click the add items list, all right, to make a selection. So we're going to do all that in just a minute, all right? Then we're going to come in and we're going to add a data source. And I'm kind of doing this ass backwards, but I want to show it to you. Because what they say here is, what do you want to do? Once you start to see this and you configure your data source, if I click that down arrow that you see right there, it's going to show me genre like we see in reviews, okay? And it's our choice. I can choose a table, and here, since genre is chosen, it shows you all the fields. If it'd be reviews here, it would show you all the reviews field. I think everybody gets that. If I click the button here that says specify a custom SQL statement, if I wanted to do a join, for example, on two tables, I choose that one. Does that make sense? Because this is just designed to show a table at a time. All right. Plus, when you start going in there and I start creating things, notice if I'd done the select star, it would have then had ID, name, and sort order. But since the star isn't chosen, it's just ID and name, it builds the SQL statement for you underneath. I think everybody's cool with that. All right. By default, it's going to show you everything. All right. So if I click the where clause, it does just what you think it would do. It allows me to go in and put in criteria. Okay. If I click the order by, and they did that here, that allows you to put in a sort order. All right, none of that should be a big surprise to anyone. Once we get into this a little further, this one may or may not be. That advanced is going to bring up a dialog that's going to have a couple different checkboxes in it. All right, one of them says, do you want me to automatically add for you insert, update, and delete? And if you click that, it will automatically add that so you've got the capability to do that. Now, because they talk about it in the book, but they don't talk about it, but they talk around it. If you choose that advanced option, you're going to see this in a few pages, but I'm just showing it to you now. If you choose the advanced option and you say you want it to generate the create, the update, and the delete for you, then one of the fields in here, one of these fields, must be your primary key. That's not my rule. That's a rule of the software. All right? So even if you don't want that ID, you still have to include it. Because that's how it knows to do the whole generation. It does that based off of the primary key. All right? And the other thing that happens when you click the advanced is it asks you about concurrency. That's not any kind of issue to us, but if for example, if we were all working off the same database in here, when you put concurrency in there, what you do is you say, what happens if Nick has the database open and he's looking at a table and I want to do something with that table? You understand? So if you have different people who want to share something, how do you want to handle that? And there's different ways that you can handle it. All right? You can do what's called being pessimistic type of locking, which says it's all his. I can't do anything with it until he closes it. That's kind of the worst case, because if he leaves it open for a long time, it can make it very hard for me to do things. The opposite of that is optimistic. All right? In there, and it's like, oh, Luke's got it open, not a problem. I'll have it open too. You know, we don't have to worry about it. He's probably just doing, some reads, and I'm going to do some inserts or whatever. The problem with that is if we both decide to change the same record, there can be a problem. Because I can make a bunch of changes to it and save it, but if Luke is like literally right after me and makes a bunch of different changes and saves it, he overwrites my changes. All right, don't think that doesn't happen, because it does. So when you start talking about this, the whole concept is one that they call locking. And when you lock, you can lock at different levels. You can lock at a database level, which means, that's about the worst, because what that means is if Eric has this database open, I can't even touch it. I can't do a thing with it. All right, so you don't typically lock on a database level, but you can also lock on a table level. So if Juan is looking at the reviews table, I can't do anything with it. All right, you can lock at a record level, which says that if Luke is making a change to a record, I can't do anything with that record. You can even go down and be as granular as locking on a field level. So I can say, for example, I'm going to make a change to this field, and nobody else can touch any record that has anything to do with that field. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different implications with that stuff. But since we're all working off of our own copy, it really doesn't matter. But the reason I wanted to say that is if you're in an actual application mode, that's the kind of thing you have to be really cognizant of, all right, and know what the heck you're working with. That's why, and I'm not being funny here, but that's why database people can make a lot of money. They really can. All right, we did that. We talked about the connection strings. I think we did, at least. We'll look at that in just a second. I want to try to figure out exactly where we are. And, of course, I left my book upstairs. So there's where we were. All right. So let me go back to the project here.
We end at page 250.
We couldn't have ended on... We couldn't end at page 250. Might have been 450. 450. I was going to say 250. I'd be worried. All right.
Before how it looks.
All right. All right. Okay. But I did want to show you that if we go back to the project now, so if I bring this back up and we go down to the bottom, and for instance, here's the web config that we have here. There's not much in it. And then there's the web config for the actual project. Notice there's a lot more in it now. And one of the things that's in here when you start taking a look is that. So I'm going to grab all that, I'm going to copy it here, and we're going to take a look at it. And I don't expect a lot of it to make a lot of sense to you, and you don't have to worry. Some of it's just generated for you, so I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to break it up over a couple different lines. All right. So the first thing says, it starts with a connection string. This, all the stuff that you see right there is all the stuff that we got when we opened up SQL Server Management Studio. That was filled in for us, for lack of better words, automatically. This says, this initial catalog, it says, okay, it's an ASP, the name of the site is Planet Rock's website, and then it appends some god-awful number onto it. It's almost like the equivalent of appending a session ID onto it. I'm not sure exactly what that one is doing. All right. Then it lets me know where this is living. All right. And again, it's telling me that I've got a data directory, ASP, and it's called Planet Rock's website. It's got that same god-awful number on it. Okay. The point is that, is any of that important? No. But the point is all that stuff was generated for us automatically. That's a good thing. If I had to remember any of that, if I had to ever type in this and they'd be expected to do that without making a mistake, it wouldn't happen. All right. So all the connection string information is basically it's done by the system and it's kept up to date by the system. All right. All right. So I heard it was page 450, and that's fine under the how it works. We did this last time, and hopefully you remember that. This is where, again, I had some problems when working with this. Okay? So what is this? This is the, it's the genres. And I don't remember if it is this one or if it is the other one. I don't remember.
John.
This is where I had the error last time. It literally, this would not compile. It came up with an error message when I did this. All right. And it basically, what the message boiled down to was the system wrote out some code for me. And one of the things that it did was it called a function that did not exist. So I added the function. And it still said that the syntax was wrong. But I looked it up in 3 or 4 different places, and it had the exact same syntax. That's when I read where a guy said, just get rid of it then. It's not going to hurt anything. It's a little scary, but I just got rid of it anyway. All right. So if I come through here, all right, and I'm going to have some kind of a new thing. I think they suggested that you put in disco. All right, it's not here. I don't know if it's on the next page or not. In fact, let's do that. No disco. All right, so we'll add disco, and we'll say for the sort order, I don't know if they have any combined or not. Let's just put in 15. All right. And it looks like nothing happened until you go to the next page, and there's disco and 15. Okay? So you can see how immediate it was. What we've done is we've stuck a details view, and we've appended it almost right to the bottom of our grid view. Okay? That's the idea behind that exercise. So you can change something here, add something, etc., and immediately it'll appear in here. Now you have no control right now over where this, what shows, except if you click here and you click here again, now you see it because notice the sorter I put in was 15. All right. But the point is the stuff is actually put into the system by the ID. And since that was an auto increment field, we talked about that last time. Oops, I don't want to do that. That there's 1 to 10. There's 11, 12, and 13. All right. So if I add another record in, as you know, it'll be number 14. Okay. This is where it starts to get really important too, because if sort order, for example, if you're going to make that a required field, then what do you do if the person doesn't have a clue as to what the sort order is? All right. You can in SQL Server, remember how you may or may not remember this, but when we looked at the reviews, for the date, we put in like create date, paren. You can put a default value in for your sort order too. The problem is then people get lazy and they just don't put in a sort order. Now you've got 50 records and 40 of them have the same sort order, which doesn't make any sense. So how it works, that's what they explain what's happening. If you like their version better than mine, you can take a look at what's in there on 450 and 451. This is where we started with the connection string stuff. As it says, the first time you drop the genre table in there, Visual Studio created the SQL data source control for you. You may or may not remember that because we did it a couple weeks ago. All right, literally we just dropped it there. This is again the kind of control. It works in the background. You don't see it on your screen. Literally, it's there, but you don't see it. And this is all the stuff that it has here. Now, why I don't have all that same stuff, I'm not sure. But let's talk about some of the stuff that's here. All right, some of it we've already talked about. The name, the connection string, etc. But some of the other stuff that's in here, integrated security equal true. All right, and I'm trying to remember exactly what that means, but we'll take a look at it. I'll tell you what I think it means, but we'll take a look at it in just a second. And the provider name, when you get system.data.sql client, that's automatically again provided for you by SQL Server Management Studio. So again, you don't have to enter any of this stuff in there. It's all put in there for you. All right. And they're saying here, it says, it then accesses this connection string as follows. And this is what I talked about last time, but I want to say it again. Anytime you start anything with the character that you see in blue here or the end character, what we're doing is inside of an ASPX file, we're putting code in there. So you have to put that code inside of those delimiters. Just kind of like in the same way that if you want to put PHP code inside of your HTML, you got to put in PHP tags. It's the same kind of thing. That's basically what you're doing right here. And again, as they say, it's called expression syntax. All right. Somewhere in here, they explain the rest of the stuff too. And I used to have a really good explanation of what that is. I don't remember what it is, but let's see if it's in here. All right. All right, the express local, yeah. The connection consists of 3 parts. The value of the first part contains the data source to identify the SQL server that's targeted. We already talked about that. That's everything that we had from SQL Server Management Studio. All right. It's on local machine. Yeah, machine name. Attach DB file name, as it says, is a path to the database. This may not be your path. All right. And what I'm saying is, as far as I know, with that path, that's again set up by the system. All right. It's not something you really have to have control over. All right. It says the last part, that's it here. The last part of the connection string has to do with security. With integrated security set to true as it is right now, all right, it says this account is the one you use to log onto your machine. It says in case you're using the full version of IIS, this account is an account named after the application pool. So the bottom line is, what you're saying is, I'm letting the system handle everything for me. All right, I'm just using all the defaults. All right. Now it's where it gets a little bit trickier, because now it's when you want to put in stuff for the where clause. So we're going to try that in just a second. But let's take a look at what they talk about here on 453. All right. So the author says, as you learn in a previous chapter, you use a where clause to filter data. Okay, that's all fine. But what you want to do when you're doing this is you want to make this as easy for the person who's working on this as you possibly can. If you say, what does that mean? Well, that's what this next exercise here is about. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'll let you take a look at the different parameters that are in there. And again, why is that stuff important? It's where you're getting the data from. So notice a cookie parameter, that's through some kind of cookie that's on the system. A query string parameter is something that you're passing in a query string. A session parameter is something that you're storing in a session, etc. All right? And they say because all these are more or less the same, it's easy to use them in your code. Well, sure it is, after you've done it a few times. All right? But they talk about trying to set up a filter here. So it says, to make long lists of data easier to manage, it's a good idea to break it up into smaller bites. A drop-down list with genres would limit the reviews of the grid view to just the ones you've seen. So imagine that we had hundreds of reviews. Then we don't want to show all 100 of them, but instead we'd have a drop-down list that would have the title above it that said genre. You'd click the drop-down list, and if I just wanted the ones for grunge, I could choose grunge, and it would siphon those out. That's exactly what they're talking about doing in this exercise. All right? All right. So it says create a new web form in the management folder. I think I've already done that, but I'm going to double check. That's called reviews. Management. I don't have one called reviews, so we'll make one. Double check and make sure I'm doing everything the way they want us to do this. Make sure it uses the code behind and is based on the new management master page. Change its title to Planet Rocks Management Reviews. Okay. Add a link to this page in the master page for the management section. So that right there, I don't like copying stuff like that, so I'm going to grab the one that's up above it that's already in there, and I'm just going to copy it down. If you say I don't understand what you're saying, I'm saying I'm going to go into here. Thought it was there. Oh, where we've got this one, I'm just going to add another one here. All right, I'm not going to run this yet, but if I did, where you saw the 2 hyperlinks before, there'd now be 3. All right. Now, this is a little bit more complex because we don't want to use the same data source that we were using before. So as it says, go back to the reviews page. All right, and it says drag a drop-down list, and then, as it says there, enable the post back, which means, again, every time we change one of the genres that we're going to put into that drop-down list, send that back again to the server because it has to be updated accordingly, because the server is where we're going to be pulling in all of the additional information. All right. So insert an item with its text set to make a selection and then clear its value that was inserted for you automatically. We're going to do all that in just a second. Once you return, it says choose a data item, so we're going to do all this. Then we have to come in here and tell it what it is we want to choose. All right, this is where it gets a little funky. All right, because it says here what data source do you want to use. No big thing there. Then it says what data field you want to display in the drop-down list. And think about that, because the field that we actually are, that we're concerned with is the ID field. But let's suppose we had 300 reviews. If you had the numbers 1 to 300 there, that probably would mean nothing to you. All right. So the field that you're actually keying off of will typically not be the data field that you're going to display, as they show right there. All right. But this is the one that's going to key everything, so to speak. All right. If all this works, then you apply the filter. Let's see. I think they show it. This is, like I said, this is where you got to set things up. So what is it saying here? This says the genre ID must be equal to a control. As soon as you change it to control, this changes. So what you're saying is the control we want it equal to is whatever's in that drop-down list. All right. So we have to choose this, and we have to choose this, and we have to choose this, and this. And the rest of it should basically be set up for us. When we click Add, then it should say the genre ID equals @genre ID. The key thing right there is the @ sign. All right, that's a query parameter. What that says right there is when you're running the program, whatever has been selected in the drop-down list, have that be what we're keying this off of. So in other words, if I change from grunge to hard rock, grab all those reviews that I had for grunge, throw them away, and bring me down to all the reviews for hard rock. Does that make sense? And I think that pretty much, we're going to go over it, but I think, I'm trying to remember if there's no, there is another exercise too. All right. So we're going to try it and see how it works. So, take all this stuff right here. In fact, I'm going to cheat a little. I'm going to grab all this, copy. So, go over to your reviews page, which is now where I am. Don't want this anymore. Switch the page to design view. From the standard category, drag a drop-down list onto the page. Okay, that's fairly simple. As long as you're in the right. Okay, so there it is. Next, we're going to have to, I believe, set that up with its data source. On the Smart Tasks panel, which is that little arrow that's right there, select Enable Postback and then click the Edit Items link. All right, enable postback and select the edit items link. All right. Insert an item with its text set to make a selection, and then clear its value that was inserted for you automatically. Okay. So add, and what they're saying is you put a value in here for text. So for instance, if I put in disco, what happens is that gets filled in for me automatically. That's what the author's saying, all right? And that's the one the author's telling you to clear out, okay? Now, if I was going to run through it, I would put all 15 of these in there. Does that make sense? Yeah? No? Okay. Well, at least one person shook their head, so thank you for shaking your head. All right. It says, once you return from the list item collection editor dialog box, the Smart Tasks panel for the list is still open. Choose the data source, boom, 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 boom. The bottom line is this. The reason that I'm not going to put 15 of these in there is that that'd be stupid. What if I had hundreds of categories? I wouldn't want to fill that up. I want to let the system fill it up for me. So that's what I'm going to do. But I have to tell the system to go over to the genres table and grab all of the different genre types and use that and fill up the drop-down list based off of that. All right, that's what this exercise, the first half of the exercise is about. So we did go in, we did all this, we went in, we enabled the postback, we clicked the edit items link, we inserted an item with its text to make the selection, and we cleared the value. All right, so that was the disco. So we've done everything on step 3. Okay? Once you return from the list item collection editor box, which is this, so once we're done, and we are, says the Smart Task panel for the drop-down list is still open. Click the Choose Data Source item and choose New Data Source. So I want to click there and choose Data Source. All right, and you see right now there's none in there, so it says choose the new data source, which is exactly what I wanted to do. All right. Oops, sorry. All right. It says the data source configuration wizard appears. It should look like what's in figure 13.7. So this picture right here looks like the picture right here. You can see they're the same thing. All right. So following the steps, click database, leave the ID set to SQL data source 1 and click OK. All right. So leave that. So I click database, keep the default name and click OK. All right. Then it comes down and it says what data connection should appear there. All right. It says select the connection string called Planet Rock's connection string 1. Well, if mine isn't that, it should be something darn close to it. There it is. All right. Click next. Now it comes up, and this is what we looked at earlier. So notice what we have in here. I can choose either genre or I can choose review. All right. And if I change it from genre to review, you see how that changed. And by default, it selects everything. But for over here, we only wanted the name and the ID. I think that was what they had there. They didn't have the sort order. All right. So I'm following the steps as they're shown in the book. All right. So that's step 6. And there's step 7. So we want it to be, it says, make sure genre is selected. And we want ID and name. Then we're supposed to click the order by, choose sort order from the drop-down list, and click OK. Okay, in English, that says we've got these. Click the order by, sort order. Click OK. And you can see that it added this for us. It's totally legitimate for us to go and sort by something that we're not showing. That's not a problem. All right. All right. Whoops. Okay. It says click next and then finish to have Visual Studio create the SQL data source for you. All right. You return to the data source configuration wizard for the drop down, and you can now have everything set up in the screen. Ideally, when we click this, should now look like this. You can test it if you want. I've already had that, so that's right now what it's going to show. And isn't that what we'd expect? All right. It's not in any kind of order. Oh, I'm sorry, it's in sort order. That's why it looks a little funky. Okay, so I'm going to click Finish. Now, the values that are in here aren't what they show in the book, but what you see in the figure right here on the screen is the same stuff that you see right there. All right. So again, the name that we want to display, that's the field name, and that's the value that we're going to base it off of. So right now, when you take a look at this, that's set up, and so is that. But if I ran it right now, instead of having in here, now it'll say grunge rock, rock, hard rock, disco, whatever. But if I left that off, it would say like 6, 13, 20, whatever it was. Okay? So this is my actual key field here. But this since it's an unintelligible field, we need this one. All right? All right. Click OK to close the dialog box to finish setting up the data source for the drop-down list. Okay. All right, so we're back to here. All right, with the drop-down list control still selected, press F4 to open up the properties grid. Set the property append data-bound items to true. When we set that, what that's going to do is in this drop-down list, it's going to add this. Does that make sense to everybody that there's 2 ways that you can do this? There's actually 3 ways that you can do it. All right? The way that they mentioned right here, press F4, open it up, set the property. You can manually key it in. All right? This is a true-false field, so you can double-click on it. All right? And those are probably the 2 ways that you'd use virtually 100% of the time. I don't know why you would want to manually key that in when there'd be no reason to do that. All right. So, and this is, hopefully this is going to say, with this here, value, make a selection. What is that? Somebody tell me what that thing right there, what is that? I know it's make a selection. Where is that going to go? It'll be the default at the top for the drop-down list. Remember we put in that first value? I put disco in there. I think that's the one that's going to end up at saying make a selection. Because then you can check it, and if it's stuck to make a selection, they haven't selected a genre. So it shouldn't show anything. All right? All right. So try to follow this stuff that's in here. All right. Press F4 to open up the properties grid. Whoops. Well, it's already open, so it really doesn't matter. All right. Set the property append data bound items to true. Somewhere in here there's something that says append data bound items. Well, that looks pretty good right there. Append data bound items. So again, I could manually key that in. I can click in here and type in true, or I can click the down arrow. Those are the three ways. So I'm just going to set that to true. All right. Now that I set that to true, they tell you to switch back into source mode, and you should notice that when you do that, I didn't see it in there, but somewhere in there.
It's right after run at server.
Was right after run at server? Okay. There you go. Thank you. That's one of the reasons, if I've been, you wonder why I always hit the enter key and put these things on separate lines. It's so I can see everything. All right. I like doing it like this. I wish they actually set it up like this. I know why they don't, because then your code, instead of having a few hundred lines, would have a few thousand lines. All right. And I get that. But to me, it's so much easier when you're trying to see if something was or was not set to do it like this. Again, you may or may not agree with that, but to me, it's much easier to do that. All right. So, and I think this is what we're going to end up changing in just a second, but I want to double check that. The list item value equal. So we want it to be nothing there and have it say make a selection. Well, I thought that was it at least. That's what we want, and this should say make a selection. Okay, that's what we're told to do right here. I'm going to save. Make sure I haven't missed anything. Save all your changes. Press Control F5 to open up the page in the browser. You should now see a drop-down list with all the genres in the database ordered by their sort order column. Remember, because we did that order by. Okay. Once you choose a new genre, the page should post back to the server. It says nothing else happens because you didn't tie any logic to the drop-down, which we do in the next exercise. But let's take a look at what we've got. So again, I'll save and I'll do a Control F5. Yeah, whatever. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now that, again, we didn't do that much in here. We put in a drop-down list. But what's cool, notice what the last thing is there in the drop-down list. That's disco. That's the one we just added. So it keeps up to date. So if we were to go back in to the previous menu that we looked at, and we were to add the capability in there to remove something, and then we brought this back up again, it would be removed from here also. All right? Or if we spelled something wrong, you get the idea. So right now, this didn't do a whole heck of a lot. But what we want to do is, and that's what we do in the next exercise, is we want to be able to click Hard Rock, for example. Then down here, we want all the reviews for Hard Rock to show. Then we want to click up here and change it to Jazz and have all the reviews for Jazz to show. And it's important that you realize when we're doing this, because we set that post back to true, what this says is anytime we click in here and we change something, that message, that's got to be set back to the server. And the reason that that's important is the server is eventually going to be what's talking to the database. And the server is going to be what has to update it and show me the reviews for that particular genre. It wouldn't do diddly if we didn't set that enable post back to true. And why am I saying that? Because I forget to do it. Everybody forgets to do it. You've got all the right code in, but it's like it's not working. That's the kind of thing you have to take a look, a look at. All right. So it's 1:50. Let's take a break, and then after the break, we'll go over how it works, and then we'll apply the filter. All right, which is the next step in here.